Hello friends, and welcome to Roar Church, Texarkana. If you want more information about anything that we do, go to jojodawson.net. You can find our YouTube videos, our blogs, where to sow, how to partner with us, any of that information. We hope that you enjoy this message. You know, this is the second week in a row that during worship I got two powerful prophetic words from the Lord. So I want you to know, when you come in at Roar and you come in for praise and worship, man, this is a time that you've got to tap into what the Lord is saying. And a lot of times I just like to block everything out and just hear from the Lord, because a lot of what I do during the week comes from what I hear God saying on Sunday morning. Amen. So a few weeks ago, I don't get on Facebook or social media a lot. I post a lot, but I don't get on there a lot. But I was looking, and it's like people in our network, one after another, they were making huge steps. And I got so excited. I said, Lord, there's so many people going for it. They are actually stepping into the prophetic word you have for them. And I felt the Lord say, you need to tell people to roar into March. Now, you think the word roar is from a line. It is, but when God gave me the word roar, it was revival, outpouring, awakening, reformation. And so I got excited about that, and the Lord put it on my heart to tell people to just go for it. So this month on Facebook, I plan to do 12 to 15 Facebook Lives with different people in our church and in our network that are absolutely 100% going for it in life. Recently, a few different people in our network have called me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure. Why are you always excited? Why are you always enthusiastic? Why are you always zealous? Why do you always seem happy?" And I asked the Lord, I said, "Lord, why am I like this?" And which I know it's my time with God and the place of prayer. But this is the two things that I really felt the Lord showed me. Listen and obey. I mean, this is how hard it really is, people. If we listen to God and we obey His voice, it's going to be all right. In every situation of your life, when you listen and you obey, you will get to the place that God has for you. Now, a lot of people, mainly young people, when they get into prayer, guys will go like, "God, use me mightily." And some of the older, mature people are like, "I don't know if you understand what you're asking for." So a lot of people say, we want to be a voice into the nation. We want to be a key leader in our business. We want to be this. We want to be that. But what you got to understand is what comes with it. And when you step into something, you have to learn how to hang on to it through the good times and the bad times. So we're going to talk about Joseph in Genesis 37. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children, because it was his son of his old age, and he made him a tunic, coat of many colors. But when his brothers saw it, that his father loved him more than his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. You must understand this. First of all, I had a gentleman tell me this one time. He said, "Joe, when somebody walks into the room, their gifts and their character speak before they do." So what happened is when Joseph stepped into the place, his brothers looked at him, and the gifting upon his life, before he ever prophesied a prophetic dream, they already were coming against him. Sometimes when people come against you in life, it's not because of who you are, it's because of who you are. It's what God has already put on side of you. Don't let anybody ever talk you out of who God made you to be. Now in verse 5, now Joseph had a dream. Oh, Lord, a lot of it starts with a dream. And he had a dream, and he told his brothers, and they hated him even more. Brother did not know how to keep his mouth shut. He was young, y'all. And it said, and so he said to them, "Please hear this dream. I have dreamed." He said, "There they were, binding sheaves in a field, and then behold, my sheaf arose above all of y'all's, and it stood up a lot taller than y'all's." And then he started telling them, and then y'all basically bowed down before me. And so they were looking at him like, "Hang on, you're the youngest, and you're telling us that we're going to bow down before you." And they kept saying like, "Oh, we're going to serve you. We're supposed to." What are you talking about? You are the youngest. Just because you got a fancy little coat doesn't mean anything. And what you got to understand is the coat, in my opinion, since you asked, was actually his mantle. And it says, and his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you have dominion over us?" So they even hated him even more. See, they didn't like him, but then they really didn't like him. And then they really, really didn't like him. Now they flat out hated him. And then he had another dream. And then the hate just kept coming, y'all, because he kept telling people his dream. And then finally his dad said, son, you know nobody likes you around the house. And he's like, yeah, but you got to hear my dream. And he was so excited because he had the dream, but at a young age, he didn't know how to speak to the right people about the dream. He didn't know how to carry the maturity out. So what you have to understand, please hear this. There are times in your life when you are going to get a dream and you might not tell the people closest to you because they may not understand you. I know there's a lot of good people in my family, and I tell them my dreams. They look at me funny sometimes. Yeah, ever made your family look at you funny? And they're like, yeah, I'll do you. And they're like, what are you talking about? He got this dream. And then his father said, look, you know, you need to kind of pull back from being so zealous. A lot of times you don't need to pull back from being zealous. You just need to know who to tell your dreams to. You need to be able to tell them to somebody who can say, oh, I'm tracking with you. I got you. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to help you out. And then this is the greatest part. Now, I want to teach you something today about how to hang on to your prophetic words, your prophetic dreams when they make no sense whatsoever, okay? He said, then he dreamed still another dream, and he told his brothers, and he said, look, guys, I know y'all don't like me, but I got another dream. At this time, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So then his father came to him and rebuked him and said, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers bow down before him? And his brothers, they didn't like him even more. But his father always remembered the dream. Sometimes, this is hard, you will tell somebody a dream that will rebuke you, but they will never forget it. That prophetic word, have you ever had a prophetic word to give somebody and you're like, oh Lord, they're going to leave the church. They're going to leave our ministry. And God said, it's okay. I'll put them in another field. You plant the seed, I'll plant them. Y'all got that? You plant the seed in them. They're going to leave, but they'll go to another field, but they'll keep that seed inside of them. I've had people that will see me and they'll be like, hey, thank you for all you did for me. And I'm like, what'd you say? They're like, remember when you rebuked me like 10 years ago? Yeah, man, I needed that. But I ain't never coming back to your church. And I said, okay, that's good, as long as you're moving forward in what God has called you to. There's a lot in this message. You're just going to have to get it from the Lord. But see, here is the most powerful thing about Joseph and his dream. Are y'all ready for this? He said, thank you, wife. He said, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars shall bow down before me. How many sons did Jacob have? He had 12. But it said that he was the son that Israel loved because of his old age. Now, what you must understand is there was another son to come later. It was Benjamin. So what happened when he gave this prophetic word and this prophetic dream, the brothers could have been like, wait a minute, you're the youngest, but there's only 10 more sons, and our mother and father are old. They're not going to have any more kids. But he stayed true to the prophetic word. Are y'all getting this? So he said that. They said, no, you're off. We only have 10 more sons besides you. There's only 11, but you're saying there's 12 total and 11 others. And he said, yes, he saw something prophetically that was to come years later, but they rebuked him because it wasn't in the natural. When you give a true prophetic word from the Lord, people cannot see it in the natural, especially natural-minded people. So when you give them a prophetic word, they're going to be, that doesn't make any sense. And they look naturally and it won't add up. So now years and years later, when Benjamin came on the scene, then the prophecy was actually fulfilled. So a lot of times when you have a word, actually the most powerful prophetic word I have right now, God will not let me release it. He said it's not time because people may not understand it. So a lot of times he will give you a prophetic word that you've got to hang on to because actually the prophetic word is what gives you hope. Have you ever had a loved one that you just prayed and prayed and prayed and then prayed some more on and God said, it's going to come to pass? Have you ever prayed for healing for something and you prayed and there was no natural sign it was going to come to pass? And finally, when it did come to pass, thank the Lord, I held on to that prophetic word. Sometimes you've got to hang on to the prophetic word with everything that you have. So Joseph, this is what happened. Then his brothers, when they got a chance, they threw him in a pit. They sold him. He got put in a prison. But what was so good about the pit and the prison, it taught him character. See, you don't learn character in the palace. You learn character in the pit. I don't want the pit. You might not want any character. You get in the hard time is when you cry out to the Lord. Have you ever heard somebody going through a hard time? When they come to the altar, they are crying out to God. When things are good, they got a little jig in their worship. Oh, Jesus, you good. My bills are paid and everything's good. But then you ever seen it when things aren't good? They come up there and they're like, God, I don't know what to do. I've done everything I can do. You've got to come through for me, God. You have to come through for me this week. I don't know what else to do. Things are a little bit different. So he was down there in the pit and he got sold. His brothers sold him into slavery. And then when he got into the prison, he just sat there. But the whole time, the prophetic word kept him alive. Does anybody in here, nothing is looking like it's going to work, but the prophetic word of God over your life is keeping you alive. It is keeping you there. I remember when I was young, I was working on my testimony. And my family, when I would go by some of my family, they're like, how you doing? I said, great. And they're like, they just pray for me. They just pray for me. And I remember my grandmama would always say, there's something different about you. There's something different about you. There's something different about you. And she would write down in her journal, she would write down all of these things. I mean, she would give me these verses. I was so tired. I don't want no verse around me. And she kept just prophesying and speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking. And it's so funny because she's in a nursing home, and you know, when you go to the nursing home with her, we have the same conversation like every 2 or 3 minutes. But because, you know, she can't remember everything, but every now and then she'll be like, now what do you do for a living? And I think, Granny, I just told you, 90 seconds ago. I said, I'm a preacher. She goes, well, I already knew that. I knew that from the time you were a little kid. And I'm like, well, how come you never told me? She said, well, you probably couldn't have received it then. Sometimes we pray people through because we see what's inside of them. So Joseph, when he was 17 years old when he had the dream. When he came out, he was around 30 years of age. And as the story goes, he had a prophetic word. He was able to hang on to the prophetic word. And then the leaders of the nation had a prophetic dream that they could not steward. Well, he was stewarding his own. So he was able to come in and tell them what the dream meant. He said, I've stewarded my own. Now I can help you. And then all of a sudden, through time, he became the second in charge of the nation. And then his brothers and his father came in. And it was so good. And I'm telling you how it is. If you ever watch the VeggieTales version of this, the ballad, I'm serious, the Ballad of Little Joe, it is so plain, it is so good. But then when the little brother comes in the show, they're peas, and when he comes in, it was like, there he is. This is the youngest brother that is the 11th one. The prophecy was fulfilled. And then they said, we need help. And then he was able to help them. They came in, surrendered themselves, and said, we don't know what to do. Without you, we are going to die of starvation. And he said, now the prophecy was fulfilled. Where they didn't believe him years and years ago, now they believed it. Listen, if they don't believe in your prophetic word, it's okay. If they don't believe in your mandate, it's okay. Don't you dare speak against them. Don't you dare come against them. But you know, the time that you walk in your prophetic word, your prophetic destiny, it's just not for you. It's for everybody else. So when Joseph stepped into number 2 in the whole nation, he was able to provide for everybody that came against him, and he did it. Why? Because in the pit and in the prison, he worked on his character. And when he came out, you know why I think he had to stay a little bit longer in there? Because his character wasn't in place. I'll just tell you, some of the things that's been delayed in my life has been because of my character. I'm getting there now because I'm tired of the delay. There's so many times that when God gives you a prophetic dream, a prophetic promise that you're going to step into, you've got to get your character in line to be able to receive it. Because listen, when Joseph was 17, if he was number 2 in the nation, his arrogance wouldn't have been able to handle it. That's why he had to go through some of that stuff. But God never left him. That's why God gave him that prophetic word. Is there anybody that's hanging on to a prophetic word that you're like, God, I don't understand? I have so many. Hey, let me tell you, the people that I really know in here, when I pray for you, I pray over your prophetic things that have not came to pass more than anything, because I'm hanging on to those with you. Man, that's good. Jonah, I love the story of Jonah. This is great. Maybe some of y'all can testify to this, but the word of the Lord came to Jonah, arise, go to Nineveh. He goes to Tarshish. Once again, VeggieTales has a great version of this. I got kids, y'all. And so the Lord, it was so plain. He said, arise, go to Nineveh. That's pretty plain. So he arose and went to Tarshish. I mean, sometimes we do that. We get a word from the Lord. We're like, God, give me a word. And he says, go right here. And you're like, no, I'm going this way. Why did you ask for a word? It would be better just to stay where you were at and not hear anything. But he went through this battle, and he went through running from God. And the thing about it was he was running from God. You know the story. Then he was on the boat. He was on the ship, and there was a storm around him. Why was there a storm around him? Sometimes when you ready for this? You were running from God. Everybody around you gets put in a storm. You don't believe me? You get a good family, and one of their children backslide. It puts all their family in a problem. I've seen one person almost destroy whole families. One person that brought a storm into their life, and it affects everybody else around them. And I've seen families that were doing so good, and they would have like a lot of kids, and then one kid mess up. It affects the other siblings, it affects the parents and the grandparents, and I'm talking about the people that stay in an old cycle. If that one person could realize if they could go towards Nineveh and get out of Tarshish, they wouldn't end up in the stomach of a great fish. And so sometimes in the stomach of the great fish, in the worst place you could possibly be, is when you get your breakthrough. So when they found out he was the problem, they threw him out with a little tough love. The great fish swallowed him up. He spent quite a minute there. And then after that time, when he came out, he was ready to go to the ways of the Lord. What you got to understand is if you've been running from God on what you're called to do, I mean, it takes this long to turn around and go to Nineveh. I don't care if you are 1,000 miles from your Nineveh. You just turn around and start walking. Get you a plane, get you a bike, get you a moped, whatever it takes, get you a bus ticket. But you start running toward your Nineveh today. And so this was great. He walked into Nineveh, and I heard a guy tell me, preached this one time, Richard Crisco. He said he preached the most powerful messages you could ever preach. He walked in and said 7 words. And some translations, when Jonah walked into Nineveh, he said 7, some translations only 8 words, and the whole city repented. The whole city. They even came in and said, put sackcloth and don't feed the animals. Man, they couldn't even give their dogs water for 3 days. Everybody started fasting. Everybody started praying. And you know what happened? The whole city. The Bible says it was a great city. I think Texarkana is a great city. I could see our region go into a revival. I could see things, and it can happen in one day. And this is what happened. So Jonah, all he had to do was turn around and go towards the things of God. Some of you, you just got to turn and go for what God has for you. If you would just go towards your Nineveh in life, it would change absolutely everything. Matthew 14, I love this story. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side. But while he sent the multitudes away, when he had sent them away, he went up to the mountain to pray. And then all of a sudden, it says, now in the midst of the sea, tossed by the waves, the wind was contrary. So all of a sudden, the disciples were there. They'd been by Jesus. Jesus was a little bit away from them. They were on the boat. It was getting tossed, seasick, y'all. And then all of a sudden, the wind was contrary. And then Jesus started walking to them. And this is what they said. This is crazy. They've been physically walking with Jesus Christ. They said, is that a ghost? And Jesus was like, guys, look, when I'm walking with you on the land every day, you know me. But when you get a little bit shaken, you can't even see me when I'm walking towards you. A lot of time you're in the midst of your trials and Jesus is walking towards you. Your answer is walking towards you and you claim it to be a ghost. Now a ghost is something that we go like, boo, Casper, we scared. So something frightened them that was actually their answer. When you want to go towards your Nineveh, the thing that will frighten you is actually going to be your answer. Whenever you say, God, use me, and he gives you something to do, you're like, oh, wow, a little scary. But you got to learn to step into it. You got to learn to step into what you're called to do. And now Peter, man, I just love Peter. And then they realized it was Jesus because he said, be of good cheer, don't be afraid. Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said one word, he said, come. But here's what I think. He didn't say, Peter, come. He just said, come. Now, we got to understand this. Everybody's watching like, hey, dude, I bet you $20 he's going to sink. I got 20 says that he's going to walk. You know, they were talking whatever. He jumped out on the water and he started walking. Now, I don't know about you, but I would have been like, Jesus, can I come too? Because if somebody is going to do something to get closer to God, I want to do it. I remember one time we were in a ministry at Liberty, Texas, and I had a prophetic word that all the guys in this ministry should go on a 7-day water fast. All the girls thought it was great. The guys wanted to stone me. But after the fast, it was good. We were getting closer to God. But they were like, no, we don't want to do that. And I was like, come on, guys, it'll be fun. We'll lose weight and save money. And so I started going towards God. And it's the same way like this. Peter started walking, but nobody else asked, could they come? Nobody else, just jumped out because, Jesus said, come. And so many times in life, when other people are moving forward, other people want to stay in the boat. This is not a season to stay in the boat. Now, whenever you're on the sea or in the ocean and the waves are tossed and the wind is contrary, the best natural thing to be in is a boat. But Peter understood in the midst of the storm, the best man-made answer is not good enough. He had to get to Jesus. So many times in life, when you're going through the roughest things, you know what you do? You know what I do? I call people to give me counsel. I remember I wore some people out when I was going through my hardships in life. I would call these men because I didn't think I could hear God. And I would talk to them about the same thing over and over and over. But when really sometimes you just need to learn to pull away, step out of your comfortable boat and get to Jesus. Do whatever it takes to get to Jesus. And then it goes on to say that when he looked at the waves, he quit looking at Jesus. He looked at the waves. He started to sink. Jesus pulled him up just like that. He's always there. But the problem is we like to run to Tarshish. We don't like to run to Nineveh. In the midst of a struggle, we don't run to Jesus. We look at our problems. We look at our situations. When Jesus has already said, come. And if you keep coming towards me, I'm going to take care of you. And so, I tell people this, for me personally, I feel in my life, I'm so far out of the boat, I couldn't get back to the boat if I tried. I've got one option to make everything work in my life. That is to keep going to Jesus. It is to keep headed towards my Nineveh. Okay, I got to tell y'all something real quick. I was sitting right here, and this is what I saw is a prophetic picture. This morning I woke up about 4. And I saw something huge, and it was like a black object in front of me. And I didn't know if it was a wall, if it was what it was something huge. And it felt good. I didn't know what it was. I was praying this morning, and I said, God, I just feel something huge. Well, during worship, I was sitting here, and it was like I saw a picture of us just sitting here. It's a little bitty, like right here, and then a huge reservoir of oil underneath. And the land between us and the reservoir of oil was like paper thin. And I said, Lord, what is this? And the Lord said, what do you always say? Plant verbal seeds into the ground. Plant verbal seeds in the ground. And I just feel, oil means 2 things, Holy Spirit and finances. And so I just feel like we are setting on something in this region. And I'm telling you, what I saw was even so much larger than Texarkana. We are setting on a move of the Holy Spirit. We are setting on finances to fund every kingdom thing in this whole region. Just not our group, but this whole region. And what the Lord was showing me is what I have for you, what I have for the people here, what I have for the people of this region is there is no limit. And I'm telling you, what I saw, it dwarfed our city, how big it was. It was huge. And the Lord said, for years, I just, as Apostle Dutch Sheets always talks about the synergy of the ages. I remember one lady, she was 75, and she said, my grandmother prayed for what y'all are about to walk into. And I said, if you're 75, and let's just say, and she said, yeah, she'd be about 125 if she was alive. But she prayed for a revival, an outpouring, an awakening, a reformation to hit this region. I believe we are setting on one of the greatest moves of God that we have ever been a part of. Yesterday, we heard Apostle Jim Hodges yesterday in New Boston at Ron Humphrey's church. And he said that some people had some prophetic words about, they saw like a big bowl of just all of the old moves of God being poured into one, and God was about to pour out on America and the earth, that they were about to pour out. It's like a combination of all the moves of God, the Jesus movement, the charismatic movement, the healing movement, Royal Church Texarkana movement. All these movements is going to come out. And I love seeing this young man. He just turned 80, but he was fired up and said something is about to happen. And this is why we're saying go for it. Because the people that have, like John the Beloved, had his head on Christ's chest, he was the one that knew more. He sought after the Lord more. He was there by Jesus. He was the one that had the head on Christ's chest. I want to know what God is doing. I want to know what God is saying. I want to know. And like Joseph, you got to understand this. A 17-year-old boy got a prophetic dream and fed a nation. Do you hear me? A 17-year-old boy got a dream and years later fed a nation. If he would not have held on to that, the nation would have famished. His personal family would have died. But because he said, yes, I understand this. I understand my dream, and then I understand the leader's dreams. I understand 7 good years, 7 bad years. We got to save up. We got to store up. Prophetic words come to you to bring healing, to save, to restore. Man, you got to understand that. A lot of times we think prophetic words just make us feel good and give us a hope and a future, which they do. But a lot of times they give us substance. They let us prepare for the future, that they let us get ourselves ready. When God gives you a prophetic picture, it is a promise. There is that process that you got to get to. And if you understood that your prophetic words in your life have so much more meaning than just a few little chill bumps and a good thing, I'm telling you, it is so powerful. And that's why I always talk about books. You don't know what books that you write, how they're going to transform people. Some of the greatest books that I'm still buying today, the people who wrote them have been dead for 20 years. And it's so funny, you hear about all these different prophets that prophesied and their prophecies come to pass 20, 30, 40, and 50 years later. But what happened is they were ridiculed back in the day. They were ridiculed back then, but now their words are coming true. Just like Joseph, man, they didn't believe him, but his family, they sure loved him. They loved him when that other son was born. They said, oh, now it makes sense. They loved him when they were hungry. And what he did through walking in the prophetic was able to change things. See, for years, I've been in the church for years. The saddest thing, I remember at one church, I was the door greeter, and it was 90% depressing. It was 90% depressing. You know me. Good morning, welcome to church. Woo, we're going to have a good day. They're like, yeah, it's going to be good. Hope they play my favorite song. And then every now and then you see this one person walk in, they're like, yeah, man, they were always the people going after God. There were always, and I was, hey, man, what'd you read this week? Man, I got some Psalms in, got me some Proverbs in, and they're talking about what they're reading in the Word. The people that weren't reading, the people that would come to plug in their charger on Sunday morning and hope they get a little juice so they can go back and unplug. No, I'm talking the people that would stay in there with the Lord are the ones. And every church I've been to, and you got your ones that walk in and they're just there. But then you got the ones, I want to be around people who are hungry for the things of God. The ones who will go towards their Nineveh. The ones who will step out of the boat and go towards the Lord. See, Proverbs 29:18, it says, where there is no vision, the people cast off for strength. But happy is the one who keeps the law. There's another translation that says, where there is no clear prophetic vision, people quickly wander astray. Now, I ask my kids every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I asked Judah this morning, hey, what are you hearing from God? What's the Lord been speaking to you about? She said, well, to pray for some friends. I said, which ones? She names them. About what? She said, Dad, how deep are we going into this? I said, we're going to go deep. And so what you got to understand is, okay, let me tell you what Steve Harvey said. This was hilarious. He said he maxed out 4 scriptures to get to where he is in life. He said, I got 4 scriptures and maxed them out completely. Y'all know mine. We get some Ephesians 3:19 and 20, Matthew 6:6, a little James 4:8. I got some scriptures that I will push and max out to the limit. You got to have your scriptures to stand on. And this is one of them. Where there's no clear prophetic vision, people quickly wander astray. You got to understand this. When somebody doesn't have a clear prophetic vision, they're going to wander astray. Your prophetic vision will keep you into Nineveh. It will keep you going straight in life. Listen, your destiny will not let you hang out with everybody. Your purpose will not let you go everywhere. You know, when you understand who you are in God, you cannot associate with every person, everything. You know, people say, hey, dude, you want to come over and watch the game? I can't. Hey, you want to come over and do this? Why? I said, man, I remember when I was young and I was single. I didn't like those days. But when I was single, people say, hey, man, you want to go ball? I said, I can't, man. I'm going to prayer. Anybody got a prayer meeting? Yeah, me and Jesus. You know, well, what are you going to do? Man, I'm going to read the Word. And I knew what I was called to do, and I went there. If you find somebody who hears the voice of God, key point, louder than any other voice in their life, you have found somebody that will hit their mark. When you find out that God's voice is the most powerful voice, now, when you start to wander astray, you'll listen to anybody. You'll talk to anybody. You know, but you've got to understand, you'll hang out with anybody. I got a friend, well, he ain't a friend anymore, really, but he moved off. But this guy, I was like, dude, you're like Jacob's son, Reuben. You'll hang out with anybody. He would walk in amongst the people and say, what are y'all doing? We're going to do this. Cool. He would go. Bible study. Cool. We're going to go drink. Cool. We're going to go. He didn't care. He just wanted to hang out with folks. And I said, dude, one day you're going to be 35 years old and you're going to have nothing going for you. The prophetic gift was strong when I was young. He's 35 years old. I ain't got a job. I ain't doing nothing. And I said, you're Reuben, man. You got to find who you are in God and go towards your Nineveh. You got to go for it. When people do not have a vision for their life, they live a very loose life. I mean, they just live loose. They talk loose. They act loose. You know, right now America's in a health kick. You see what people eat. You see how they live their life. You get around people and you see what they watch. You'll see how they believe in their life. You know, I'm a very driven person by nature. I just am, and I like that. But I'm driven because I know God did not say, let's just make Joe Dawson. No. He had a purpose for me. He had a plan for me that when people get around me, their lives are going to be better. And it's the same for you. Every person in here, when you come here on Sunday morning, you make this place better. Man, your testimony was so powerful this morning. Made me want to go for it a little bit more. It's just so good. Susan Hubel made a Facebook group page this week. She's going to get that group page out there. She's doing something. Man, find out where your Nineveh is and go towards it. Preach 7 or 8 words and bring a whole city to revival. You have no idea what is on the other side of your obedience. You know, vision controls. Your God vision controls all your choices in life. Your natural vision will stir movements, and in the spirit, the same is true. You know, like if y'all believe in buffets, I like fasting and then buffets, you know. Like when you're in a buffet, you're walking, you're like, oh, y'all just putting out some fresh steak? Well, okay, I got you. And then you're over here, what kind of Mexican food? Y'all got 8 dishes, give me 9 of them. And, you know, it's like that. But when you're in spending time with the Lord, He'll start giving you things. I love talking to intercessors. They'll be like, you know, God, give me, one of my intercessors said, Joe, I'm getting overloaded. I said, well, quit asking for people to pray for. He said, God keeps giving me more and more and more and more and more. And I said, good, because you can handle it. You know, my mom one time, she got on to me. I was 30, my sister was 34, and she said, you know, I don't have any grandbabies. And everybody has grandbabies but me. And I said, Mom, be careful what you ask for. In, I think it was 23 months, she had 4 granddaughters. And she said, whoa, I didn't mean like this many that quick. I'm like, hey, Bible says be fruitful and multiply. You wanted grandkids? You got 4 real quick. Now what you got to say? Can I have a grandson? Yeah. And then she got a grandson. But a lot of times in life, listen, you can be around vision killers and you can be around vision helpers. And you know, I've been preaching vision and dreams and destiny for you, but let me tell you something. When we hear messages like this, we think, oh, dream, destiny, purpose, go get it. It's fun. You'll be successful in life. That's good. But Joseph, when he said yes, do you understand that a nation was changed because of him? At 17 years old, people came against the gift that would save their natural family. And I'm still trying to get this revelation. A 17-year-old kid, people The ones called to love him the most were the ones that hated him the most, but he was the one to save their whole lineage. He was the one called to save a whole nation. I'll tell you, this is crazy, but I think people tried to spank the apostolic out of me when I was a kid. Man, and in school, then my parents, they double team me. And you know what? It's just like sometimes people don't understand. So this is what I ask the Lord. I say, Lord, let me see my 3 kids totally different. They're totally different. And let me be able to train them, disciple them, and raise them up in their gifts. And when they act totally different. Like you can get onto one, you can look at one, and they'll cry. You can spank the other, and they're like, are we done? It's just they're all different in how they do things. And so in life, don't let natural-minded people, good people who love you, don't let them talk you out of what you're really called to do. So if Joseph would have said, oh, Dad, you don't like my dream? Okay. And then my older brothers don't like my dream. Okay, well, I don't guess it was from God. I guess it was just whatever, but I'm not going to do it now because they don't like me. No. But when you make God so real to you, nobody. Let me tell you, when I met Autumn, I knew right off the bat. But every key voice in my life and in her life said, no, that ain't of God. And I was in a more traditional Pentecostal church, and she was in a real charismatic church, and they were like, oh, they're too charismatic. They're kind of a little, And then she wild. And then their church was like, well, Joe's one of those, Pentecostal churches, and they this, they that. They just didn't know the wild was kind of hid behind religion. But when it all happened, and I was thinking, God, no, you told me that she was the one. And then I looked at her, I'm like, confirmation. And so we knew, but like I think she had one, like a spiritual mother at the time, and I had a spiritual father. And this is what this guy said to me. He said, if I trust you to work at my church, I trust you to pick out your wife. And I said, well, thank you. You're the only one. And she didn't have a whole lot of people, but then it worked in time. Why? Because people see natural. You can't let people talk you out of you. I remember when I told my family that I was going to be a preacher, they're like, well, first of all, you stutter. Second of all, you can't look down and make sense of words. And you've never public spoken in your life. Can you quote 10 verses? I'm like, Jesus wept. I was trying, but I knew a call upon my life. And all of a sudden, everybody around me said, preachers are broke. Preachers are this. And I said, God, I have this, that. Their words drove me to the place of prayer. And I remember at that point, I had to decide, do I trust people who love me, or do I trust the voice of God more? And that was so tough. And what I've learned is when my kids say something, well, I really feel that I'm like one time, Ezra, he's like, Dad, I want some more fruit snacks. I'm like, no, son, you've already had enough. And he's like, I really feel like the Lord wants me to have some. I'm like, okay, I'm not feeling the Spirit of God on this, but go ahead, son. He's like, that'll work. And I'm like, man, what do you do in that situation? Hear God, I just did, Dad. But in life, find out what God wants you to do. And now, I'm diving off into something that wasn't in my notes. As I get older, I look at every person in my family who may not think like I think now, and I see why God had them in my family. Like my father, his work ethic is, ridiculous. It's ridiculous work ethic. I learned a work ethic from my father. And I look at my mom and how compassionate she is and how she wants to help everybody. I learned, and Big Nanny used to spank me a lot. I saw what I learned in her life. And I look at everybody. So don't ever come against somebody from your past that may not be helping you move forward in your future, but think the foundation that God put you on. See, the situations that you were in the past, nothing will ever be wasted. They may have hurt you, they may not happen right, but I promise you will learn from them and become stronger. Listen, when you know who you are in God, you know how to act and you know how to respond to every person and to every situation. I have learned this. This is how I respond to a lot of things. I don't say anything. And because people ask me a crazy question, I'm just looking at them. And I don't know what to say sometimes. You can try to explain yourself and try to explain your vision, but actually you'll cheapen it. And when you start thinking about why you do some things, where is the listen and obey? You listen to God. Nothing I ever felt I was supposed to do. I mean, like everything that I do, speaking, writing, all of this stuff, I never could do it when I was a kid until I finally said, God, I'm horrible at all of this stuff. And then He stepped in. God is just looking for somebody who will listen to His voice and obey what He tells you to do. It's really that simple. There's some details along the way, but that's where you got to go. One of the greatest things a man ever told me one time is he said, Joe, whatever you do in your life, become an expert in your field. You will never go hungry and you'll never be out of work. And I'm thinking, okay. So that's what I've tried to become. I would try to become an expert in everything that I do. When I wanted to start a housing business, I found the 2 older gurus who were not insecure about a young person coming up. And they took me out to lunch and mentored me. Find people to help you do what you are called to do. Find somebody, if you're going for your Nineveh, find somebody who goes to Nineveh every year. Find somebody who knows how to do it. I love talking to older generals and asking them a question, and I get nervous around some of them. But then I find out, do you know what the older generals of the faith are looking for? Sons and daughters. And when I get nervous around a general and I get to speak to one of them, that's like, and I've read their books, I've watched them on video, and I've never been around it. When I speak, they're like, oh, hey, man. And I'm like, oh, you're real. The people that you admire would love to spend time with you. The people that, I remember one time I asked a guy, I said, hey, can I take you out to lunch and you teach me how to be a husband? He's like, sure. I said, can I take you out to lunch and teach me how to be a parent? He said, you don't have any kids yet. I said, I know, but I want my kids to act like your kids. And in life, there are people, God will never put you in a situation where He will not be there and He will not put somebody around you to help you. I remember when first time I went to the gym, man, I was about as big as this right here. And I said, man, what do I got to do? So my friends were like, dude, what's up? You don't work out? And I looked at them, they were skinnier than me. I'm like, no. I found these big old guys, and I said, I want to work out with you. I said, what do you eat? And I'm like, a horse doesn't eat that much. And I started talking to them. They told me how to work out and what to do and all this. And so you get around people in life, successful people that love God. They give hints. They want to teach. They want to train because they understand legacy. They understand, listen, your prophetic word is a legacy. Joseph, when he got the dreams at 17, all through the process, it led him to leave a legacy for his whole family. You are a carrier of legacy. It is so much bigger. How many people here like Keith Green worship? Listen to Keith Green. Okay? I mean, he's been passed away for years and years. How many of you like Leonard Ravenhill books? If you didn't say yes, I don't know if you're saved. But Ravenhill books, I mean, these things are so rich. And he's been passed for years. Whenever people create things, that's what it's about. Helping further the next generation. Hebrews 11:1. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Dave Wilkerson says, real faith is this, believe in God 100% and seeing nothing, 0%. I see nothing happening. Zero's happening, but I believe God. Do you believe God more? So this whole series is Roar into March. Listen, when we started Roar, the thing God told us was help people find their voice. Some people's voice is behind a microphone. Some's behind the camera, some's behind a pen, some's at Cooper Tire, some's at IP, some's at Domtar, some's at working at a restaurant. You ever notice how a waiter or waitress can just alter your day? You ever seen a nurse at a hospital or at a doctor's office can come in like, oh man, I've seen so many people beat what you're going through right now. You're going to be okay. How just wherever you're at, you can just shift the day. You can change the day. And I remember going into different gyms, and I'm a part of Gym Box, and the new owner, man, he's just like, just like if somebody comes in and trying to lose weight, he encourages them, lays hands and prophesies over them too. And if someone's trying to gain weight, he'll go and lay hands and prophesy to them. And one day I walked in, he said, why are you walking bad? I said, man, I'm battling this physically. Oh, we'll get rid of this real quick. He laid hands and he just went for it right there. And I said, dude, that's awesome. You can do this. He said, yeah, I own the place, man. Let's go for it. Let's go for the things of God. Let's manifest the kingdom. I'm like, oh, you want to manifest some kingdom? And he said, this is it, man. And so his vision was to change some things. You got a vision inside of you to change some things. Faith without works is dead. You get the prophetic word. I always say it, but you fast and pray like it all depends on God and then you work like it all depends on you. Sweat equity, Katie. Sweat equity. And you go for the things. James 2:14, my dear brothers and sisters, what good is it if someone claims to have faith but demonstrates no good works to prove it? Man, I just believe that prophetic vision I had about that huge reservoir of oil. And the thing between us and that oil was paper thin. I always will believe how many people are on the just the edge of a breakthrough they've been praying for. Just the edge of something they've been believing for. The little widow in the Bible with the two sons, she had nothing. She was going to try to make a cake and die, and her sons were going to be sold. And then all of a sudden, a man of God came in with the word. Sometimes you just got to have that word given to you. Sometimes you are the one that gives that word. Have you ever been somewhere at a restaurant and they sit you down at Ironwood to eat your fish tacos, your quesadillas, or your steak, and you look over and you got a word for somebody and the steam's coming off the fajitas wherever you're at, and you're like, and you go give that word, and that person will come back to you 5 years later and say, that word changed my life. If you understood how many people's prophetic words you have inside of your mouth, if you just listen and obey, you can change just not your life, just not your kids and your grandkids, but you can change so many people around you when you fully understand that. Listen, this is kind of encouraging, but not really. When you get a God dream or vision, you will spend the rest of your life defending it by your actions. Just all the days of your life, you'll be defending it by your actions. And when God told me that, I'm like, well, Lord, that doesn't sound real, let's go for it. But by your actions, when nothing is manifesting in the natural, and I have such a heart for prodigal sons and daughters to come back to God, that when you don't see it and they mess up again, just, can you believe one more time? Just, I remember for people in my family, I'd say, God, I've prayed for years, but just one more time, just I'm going to pray one more time, God, and then I pray one more time, then one more time. And then now everything I prayed for, it's coming to pass. But you will defend it by your actions every day of your life. You know, your destiny won't let you go everywhere, and your purpose won't let you hang out with everyone. It just won't sometimes. And that doesn't mean people are bad. It's just sometimes people waste time. This word is strong on me today. I hope you sense my heart behind it. This is a very good season. Now the Lord told me at the first of this year, the first 90 days was going to be a building time. Well, this is the last 30 days of that word. And my March prophetic thought that God gave me, and this is what's funny, I never asked for a word for a month. God just gives it to me. The Lord gave me 3 words. I felt the Lord say, continue to build. So the word build, transformational, transition. And what I saw was a bridge from one place to the next. That there was a bridge being built this month, and you're at one place, transformational into your transition. You hear the word transition in the body of Christ, but I'm telling you, in this month, your mind is about to be renewed by God, and you are about to make some transitions. I mean, I could tell you about us. I signed a lease on a building Friday, so I got an office, and then I got a bonus room, which is going to be our video room, which is twice as big as the office that I was going to purchase for one price, and then I got another room for twice as big for the same price of just that one. I got a double blessing, and the double blessing was twice as big as the first one, and it was under our budget, so we got an office. We're moving forward. It's just so many people in this hour are moving forward in what they're called to. They're moving forward in their prophetic words. Now, it's a work time. If you're building in the transformational transition, you're about to see some things manifest. You're about to see some things happen in a good way. And when you see things start to happen, it just excites you. Recently, I helped a pastor, I guess you could say, rehabilitate. He thought he was down. We worked. He got up. And man, he messaged me and was like, dude, it's working. It's happening. God's restored. It's all good. I'm back in the flow of what I was going to do. And I love that. I love helping people get from one place to the next. Find somebody. Get your mind off of you. Find somebody to help get them from point A to point B. Look, dude, quit going to Tarshish. Man, turn around. Nineveh, right there. Nineveh. Keep going towards Nineveh. You got to point people in the right direction. So that was the word. For this month, you're going to build transformational transition. And when the transition happens, get ready for it. So we're going to roar into March, and we're going to go for it. And I say stuff like this a lot, and I will the rest of my life. I want you to pick out your prophetic dreams. I want you to write them down. I mean, even your old ones that you haven't seen come to pass. And I want you to war over them all of March. I want you to go over your prophetic words. If you were called to write a book and you quit writing, pick it up and write that book. We got people, talk to Jeff and Michelle after service. They'll tell you how to get the book completely published. And so this is the time. This is the time for you to do what the Lord, and I even feel the Lord speaking to me just right now about people. You're going to get old dreams. They're going to come back. They're going to come back. I mean, we're in worship, and I'm sitting over here, and I can't even tell you a song we did during worship because it's like I had just a flow from the Lord. He started showing me video ideas. He started showing me ministry ideas. He started giving me insight, and I'm like, Lord, I want to write it down, but I'm afraid to move. There's such an open flow. When we go back into worship, I want you just to let the Lord speak to you and just open you up to do what you were called to do. And why is this so important? One of my kids told me the other day, she said, Dad, you're so energetic. I said, thank you. She said, sometimes you get a little irritated when you're not moving on something, but she said, but for the most part, you're pretty cool. And I'm like, thanks. And she said, what I love about you is you see something and you go for it. And then I said, well, how can people not go for it? And I don't know why I'm stuck on prodigals, but if God says a prodigal's coming in, you keep depositing and you're going to get a return. You keep depositing, you're going to get a return. Your dreams that seem dormant, you keep depositing, they're going to give it. And I'm trying to stop. The Lord spoke to me about something, about pray for the people here and in our network, creativity. And one of my kind of a guru guy that speaks into my life about finances and business and stuff, he said, ask God to give you a vision 2 to 5 years down the road and start working for 2 to 5 years down the road. And when you get there, you'll be prepared and ready. Work on your now, but work on your 2 years and work on your 5 years. And when you get to the 5 years, you'll be ready. Like my wife and I, we invest for later in life and stuff, but I worry about now. I worry about a little bit later, 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years down the road. You got to expand your vision for your life. You got to expand. Where are you going? I don't know. You're not going to end up at Nineveh. You're going to end up over here at Tarshish. You're going to end up in the belly of a fish. You got to step out of the boat at some point in your life, and you have to go for it. You listen and obey.